Danielle Brooks learned early how to make herself smaller without disappearing completely. It started long before Rivers and Rye, before the pressed black uniform and the quiet rules that were never written down. It started in cramped apartments, in crowded buses, in places where attention could be dangerous if it lingered too long. By the time she became a waitress in downtown Chicago, shrinking herself had become muscle memory. At Rivers and Rye, disappearing was a skill. You didn't rush. You didn't hover. You learned how to read the room the way sailors read weather. A lifted eyebrow meant refill. A tight smile meant don't ask questions. A hand placed just a little too casually on the edge of the table meant step back and keep it professional, even if your stomach nodded. Danielle was good at her job. Not because she loved it, but because rent didn't care how you felt. The restaurant sat along the Chicago River, all glass walls and muted lighting, the kind of place where people spoke softly but held power loudly. Most nights blurred together. What? Laughter that wasn't hers. That Thursday evening started like any other. Rain streaked the windows, turning the city into a smear of lights and shadows. Danielle tied her apron tighter, checked her reflection in the service mirror, and stepped onto the floor. Her section was full. Business dinners. Quiet couples. A group celebrating something she didn't ask about. The hum of the room settled into her bones. She moved smoothly. Took orders. Delivered plates. Smiled when required, neutral when not. Somewhere between the kitchen and the bar, she felt that familiar sense of relief, the kind that comes when the night is busy enough to distract you from your thoughts. Then something shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. Just a tightening in her chest, like the air had changed pressure. She was clearing a table near the bar when she felt someone behind her. Too close. Close in a way that ignored personal space like it had never existed. Danny. The sound hit her before the meaning did. Her hand froze mid-reach. The glass nearly slipped from her fingers. No one at Rivers and Rye called her that. No one in her life did anymore. Not since she'd decided that name belonged to a version of herself she had left behind. Slowly she turned. Leonard Pike stood there as if he had always belonged in that space. Rain darkened his jacket. His hair was shorter than she remembered, his posture confident in a way that made her skin crawl. He looked rested, grounded, like someone whose life had continued uninterrupted. Her heart began to pound, heavy and fast. For a split second, her brain did something cruel. It offered denial. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe exhaustion had filled in a face that wasn't real. Then he smiled. "There you are," Leonard said, his voice easy, familiar. "I've been trying to reach you." The restaurant noise faded into a dull roar. Danielle became acutely aware of everything at once. The clink of cutlery, the low jazz humming through the speakers, the way her name tag felt heavier than usual on her chest. "You can't be here," she said. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Leonard shrugged, glancing around. "Looks like I am." She took a step back, instinctively creating distance. "I asked you not to contact me." "I didn't," he replied smoothly. "This is just coincidence." Her stomach twisted. Leonard didn't believe in coincidence. "Please leave," she said. "I'm working." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I just want to talk. 5 minutes. You owe me that." The word "oh" landed hard. "I don't owe you anything," she said. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Around them, the restaurant carried on. People laughed. Glasses were raised. No one noticed the way Danielle's shoulders had gone rigid, or how her breath had shortened. Leonard straightened, his smile returning, polished and false. "Relax," he said. "You always make things bigger than they are." Her fingers curled into her apron. She thought about the manager, about security, about the back door. Every option felt too far away. "I'm going to get my manager," she said. Leonard chuckled softly, like he found the idea amusing. "Go ahead," he said. "I'll be right here." As she turned away, his fingers brushed her elbow. Not a grab, just a reminder. "Don't make this ugly," he murmured. Danielle pulled free and took a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. If you've ever worked a job where you had to swallow fear just to finish your shift, you know this moment. You know the calculation. You know the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, someone else will notice. And if stories like this feel familiar, it might be worth staying with this one. She took 3 steps toward the service station. Then she felt it again. That pressure. That sense that something was about to break. And before she could call out for help, a calm, unfamiliar voice cut through the noise behind her. Is everything okay here? The voice didn't belong to the room. It wasn't loud, but it carried. Calm in a way that didn't ask permission. Danielle stopped walking. For half a second, she considered pretending she hadn't heard it. That instinct, to keep moving, to not draw attention, was strong. But Leonard had already turned toward the sound, irritation flashing across his face. Danielle glanced back. A man stood a few feet away near one of the corner tables by the windows. He hadn't rushed over. He hadn't raised his voice. He simply stood there, posture relaxed but alert, like someone who noticed details other people missed. Yes, Leonard said before Danielle could answer. His smile snapped back into place. Everything's fine. The man's eyes shifted to Danielle. Not lingering. Not invasive. Just a quiet check-in. She felt something loosen in her chest. Barely. Enough to breathe. I'm working, she said carefully. And I've asked him to leave. Leonard's jaw tightened. You don't need to get strangers involved. The man tilted his head slightly. She doesn't look like she's asking for involvement. She looks like she wants space. Leonard scoffed. And who are you supposed to be? The man didn't answer right away. He took a step closer, positioning himself not aggressively, but deliberately between Danielle and Leonard's line of sight. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Protective in a way that didn't demand gratitude. Someone who doesn't like seeing people cornered, he said. Danielle felt the weight of the moment settle into her bones. Her heart thudded. She was aware of how close they all were now, of the fact that if Leonard raised his voice, attention would snap toward them. Part of her wanted that. Part of her feared it. Leonard laughed, sharp and humorless. You got a hero complex or something? The man didn't react. I asked if everything's okay. Danielle swallowed. Her mouth was dry. She nodded, then shook her head, unsure which was safer. I'm fine, she said automatically. Then she corrected herself. I mean, I'm not. I've asked him to leave me alone. That was enough. Leonard's smile faded completely. We're not doing this here, he said, his tone warning. The man turned slightly toward Danielle. Do you want to step away from him? It was a simple question. No pressure. No assumption. Danielle hesitated. Saying yes felt dangerous. Saying no felt worse. I can't, she said quietly. I'm on shift. The man glanced toward the host's stand, then back at her. Then sit. She blinked. What? He pulled out the chair beside him. Just for a moment. Leonard stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You're kidding. The man looked at Danielle again, his voice lowering. Just pretend, he said. I won't let anyone hurt you. The words landed with unexpected weight. Danielle's body reacted before her mind caught up. Her pulse spiked. Her hands trembled. Sitting on a stranger's lap was not safe. It was not logical. Every alarm in her head screamed no. But Leonard was right there. Close. Watching. She thought of the times she'd been cornered before. Of how people always said later, why didn't you just leave? She nodded once. The man stood, guiding her gently, giving her time to change her mind. She didn't. When she sat, her muscles locked, her breath shallow. He settled back into the chair, one arm coming around her waist. Not tight, not possessive. Just enough to make the message clear. Leonard's face twisted. You've got to be kidding me. The man met his gaze calmly. She's with me. Danielle stared at the floor, every nerve buzzing. The room felt louder now. She was aware of movement nearby. A waiter passing. Someone glancing over, then away. Leonard stepped closer. You don't know her. The man's arm tightened slightly, grounding. I know she doesn't want you near her. A manager appeared then, drawn by something in the air. Is there a problem? Leonard straightened immediately. No problem at all. Just ran into an old friend. The manager's eyes flicked to Danielle, then to the man holding her. Recognition crossed his face, fast and unmistakable. "Mr. Langford," the manager said. His tone shifted. Respectful. Careful. "Everything all right?" Danielle didn't understand why Leonard stiffened at the name. She didn't understand why the manager didn't look at her again. The man nodded once. "Yes. But I'd like this gentleman to leave." There was no argument. No discussion. The manager turned to Leonard. "Sir, I'll have to ask you to go." Leonard's eyes burned into Danielle. "This isn't over," he said quietly. She didn't respond. She couldn't. As Leonard walked away, the tension didn't disappear. It just changed shape. When the doors closed behind him, Danielle realized she was shaking. The man waited. He didn't move. Didn't rush her. When she finally stood, he helped her without a word. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, tears threatening. "Thank you." He handed her a card. "If you need anything." She glanced at the name, barely registering it. Victor Langford. Later, alone in the bathroom, Danielle locked herself in a stall and cried. Not loudly. Carefully. The way you do when you still have tables waiting. She didn't know yet that this moment, this choice, had just tied her life to his in ways neither of them could see. And she didn't know Leonard was already planning his next move. Danielle splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection until her breathing slowed. The bathroom at Rivers and Rye was small and immaculate, all white tile and soft lighting that made everyone look calmer than they felt. Her eyes betrayed her anyway. They were too wide, too alert, like someone listening for footsteps that might never come, or might come too soon. She dried her hands carefully, smoothing her apron as if neatness could restore order. The tears had stopped, but the shaking lingered in her fingers. Leonard was gone. She repeated that to herself like a fact she could lean on. Leonard is gone. Still, she waited another 30 seconds before unlocking the door. When she stepped back onto the floor, the restaurant looked exactly the same. Conversations flowed. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loudly at a joke that probably wasn't funny. The world hadn't paused just because hers had tilted. That was always the strangest part. Danielle moved through her section on autopilot. She refilled water glasses she didn't remember emptying. She smiled when spoken to. She nodded at things that barely registered. Her body knew the routine even while her mind lagged behind. At the corner table by the window, Victor Langford sat alone again. He hadn't returned to his drink. It sat untouched, condensation sliding down the glass. He didn't stare at her, didn't try to catch her eye. If anything, he looked deliberately occupied with his phone, as if giving her space was another quiet decision. She appreciated that more than she wanted to admit. Halfway through the shift, the manager pulled her aside near the service station. "You good?" he asked quietly. She nodded too fast. "Yes." He studied her for a moment. "If you want to cut early." "I'm fine," she said. This time she meant fine enough. He hesitated, then nodded. "Let me know." Danielle exhaled when he walked away. She didn't want special treatment. She wanted normal. Normal meant finishing her shift, clocking out, and walking home without looking over her shoulder every 5 seconds. Except normal had already cracked. As the night thinned out, she found herself aware of Victor again. Not because he demanded attention, but because he didn't. When she passed his table, he looked up once. "You sure you're okay?" he asked quietly. She paused. "I will be." He nodded, accepting the answer without pushing. Good. That was it. No lecture. No insistence. When her shift finally ended, exhaustion hit her all at once. The kind that made her bones feel heavy. She changed in the locker room, folding her uniform with care she didn't feel, then sat for a moment on the bench, staring at the business card in her hand. Victor Langford. The name meant nothing to her. It sounded generic, corporate, like it belonged on a building directory. She slid the card into her locker and shut the door. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement, stretching into long, shimmering lines. Danielle pulled her jacket tight and started toward the bus stop, every step measured. She didn't see Leonard. That should have reassured her. Instead, it made her more alert. On the bus ride home, she replayed the night in fragments. Leonard's voice. his hand brushing her arm. Victor's calm presence. The weight of sitting on a stranger's lap and feeling, against her will, safe. That bothered her most of all. Safety had always come with conditions, with expectations, with a cost. Her apartment was quiet when she arrived. Too quiet. She locked the door behind her, double-checked the windows, and leaned back against the wall, letting the silence press in. Only then did her phone buzz. Her heart jumped. A text. A known number. She stared at the screen, dread creeping up her spine. It wasn't Leonard. Asterisk just wanted to make sure you got home safe. This is Victor. Asterisk. She didn't reply right away. She set the phone down on the counter and paced the length of her living room. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Another part, the tired, shaken part, felt seen in a way she wasn't used to. After a minute, she typed back. Asterisk, I'm home. Thank you. Asterisk. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Asterisk, I'm glad. If you need anything, you can reach me. Asterisk. She stared at the message. There was no pressure in it. No follow-up question. No invitation disguised as concern. She typed thanks and put the phone face down. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every sound made her tense. A car door outside. Footsteps in the hallway. Her mind kept circling the same thought. Leonard had found her once. He could do it again. And somewhere in the city, a man she barely knew had stepped into her life without asking, and without realizing just how complicated that decision was about to become. Morning light crept through the thin gap between Danielle's curtains, pale and unwelcome. She hadn't slept so much as drifted in and out of shallow rest. Every time her eyes closed, her body braced itself, waiting. When she finally gave up and sat up in bed, her muscles ached like she'd run miles in her sleep. The apartment looked the same as it always did. Small, clean, quiet. The kind of quiet that could feel peaceful or threatening depending on the day. Today it felt fragile. Danielle moved through her routine carefully. Shower. Coffee. Phone check. No missed calls. No new messages. Leonard's name didn't appear on the screen, but that didn't settle her nerves. Leonard had always known how to wait. Waiting was part of how he won. On her walk to the bus stop, she caught herself scanning reflections in windows. A dark car idling too long made her pulse spike. A man walking behind her for half a block sent her crossing the street for no real reason other than instinct. By the time she reached work that afternoon, she was already exhausted. Rivers and Rye glowed softly behind its glass walls, polished and indifferent. Inside, everything smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee grounds. The familiar sounds wrapped around her, almost comforting. Almost. Her co-workers greeted her like nothing had happened. Quick wave. A comment about the weather. Someone complaining about a double shift. Danielle nodded, smiled, slipped back into the version of herself that knew how to function. The room filled gradually. Early diners. Regulars. The steady rise of noise that made the space feel alive. And yet, every time the front doors opened, her stomach tightened. She told herself Leonard wouldn't be stupid enough to come back so soon. Not after being removed. Not after making a scene in a place like this. Still, fear didn't care about logic. Halfway through the evening, she noticed Victor again. He sat at a different table this time, closer to the bar. Alone. No laptop. No phone. Just a glass of water and his hands folded loosely in front of him. She didn't know why her chest tightened at the sight of him. He didn't wave. Didn't smile. He glanced up when she passed, then looked away, giving her the choice to acknowledge him or not. She appreciated that more than she wanted to admit. When she finally approached his table, it was because it was her job. "Can I get you anything?" she asked. "Just water is fine," he said. Then, after a beat, "Are you sure you're okay?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I'm here." A faint smile touched his mouth. Fair answer. As she walked away, she realized something unsettling. She hadn't thought about Leonard for the last few minutes. That scared her almost as much as it relieved her. Later, in the break room, one of the servers leaned toward her. "Hey, you know that guy over there?" Danielle's heart skipped. "Which guy?" "The one who came in again. Sits like he owns the place." Danielle kept her face neutral. No. Her coworker shrugged. Manager was acting weird around him last night too. Like, extra polite. Danielle forced a laugh. Probably a big tipper. Probably, the server said, unconvinced. Danielle returned to the floor with a strange weight in her chest. She hadn't thought much about Victor beyond gratitude and confusion. Now curiosity crept in unwanted. Near the end of the night, the restaurant grew quieter. The river outside reflected the city lights, slow and steady. Danielle moved through her closing duties, wiping tables, stacking chairs, grounding herself in the physicality of it. Victor stood as she passed, slipping on his jacket. "Danielle," he said gently. She paused. "Yes. I'm heading out," he said. "Just wanted to say, if anything changes, if he comes back, you don't have to handle it alone." She met his gaze. "I know." He hesitated, then added, "I mean that." After he left, Danielle stood still for a moment, staring at the door. When her shift ended, she walked out with two coworkers, laughing at something she didn't quite hear. The air outside was crisp, the rain finally gone. Halfway down the block, she felt it again. That pressure. That sense of being watched. She glanced over her shoulder. At first she saw nothing. Then she noticed a figure standing across the street, partially hidden by shadow, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. But she knew. Leonard hadn't come back inside. He just found a different place to wait. Victor Langford watched the street through the restaurant's glass wall long after Danielle disappeared down the block. He hadn't meant to stay that late. He rarely lingered anywhere anymore. Time had become something he guarded, parceled out between meetings, calls, obligations that came with a life built on ownership and expectation. But that night, he found himself sitting still, fingers wrapped around a glass he hadn't finished, eyes following a reflection that no longer moved. Something about the way she'd stiffened earlier hadn't sat right with him. Victor had learned to read people for different reasons than most. Boardrooms taught you when someone was lying. Negotiations taught you when fear was being disguised as confidence. Years ago, he'd learned the cost of ignoring that instinct. It had cost someone else far more than it had cost him. When he finally stood and shrugged on his jacket, the host gave him a polite nod. Outside, the city felt damp and electric, the kind of night where sounds carried farther than they should. Victor spotted him immediately. Across the street, near a closed storefront, a man stood half in shadow, phone at his ear. He wasn't pacing. Wasn't in a hurry. He watched the restaurant the way predators watched watering holes, patient, certain something would pass through. Victor slowed his steps. He didn't know the man's name. He didn't need to. He recognized the posture. The entitlement. The way the man's gaze lingered on the doorway Danielle had exited minutes earlier. Victor's jaw tightened. He crossed the street without thinking too hard about it. Years of advisors had trained that instinct out of him. Tonight it resurfaced anyway. As Victor approached, the man lowered his phone slightly, eyes flicking up. "What?" the man said, already defensive. "You were inside earlier," Victor said calmly. The man smirked. "So were you." Victor stopped a few feet away. Close enough to be heard. Far enough to avoid escalation. "You were asked to leave." The man's eyes hardened. "That your business?" Victor studied him. Mid-30s. Controlled anger. The kind that didn't flare until it did real damage. It is when someone doesn't want you near them. The man laughed softly. "You don't know anything." Victor held his gaze. "I know she was afraid." For a moment, something ugly surfaced in the man's eyes. Then it vanished, replaced by amusement. "You think you saved her?" he said. "That's cute." Victor didn't respond. The man stepped back, slipping his phone into his pocket. "You should stay out of things that don't concern you." Victor's voice stayed even. "You should leave her alone." Silence stretched between them, thick and charged. Traffic hissed behind them. Somewhere, a siren wailed and faded. Finally, the man smiled again. "This isn't over." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the night without looking back. Victor stood there longer than necessary, heart beating heavier than he liked to admit. He hadn't handled that perfectly. He knew it. He'd inserted himself into a situation with layers he didn't understand. but walking away felt worse. He drove home with the radio off, city lights blurring past. His phone buzzed once at a stoplight. A message from his assistant about a meeting he'd postponed twice. He ignored it. Instead, his thoughts stayed with a woman he barely knew. Danielle Brooks. He'd memorized the way she held herself, like someone bracing for impact that never fully came. He'd seen that before too. In courtrooms. In depositions. In quiet rooms where people told their stories too late. At home, Victor poured himself a drink and stood by the window, staring out at the skyline. He told himself he'd done enough. That she hadn't asked for anything more. That intervening again would cross a line. Still, when his phone buzzed later that night, his chest tightened. Unknown number. He's still out there, the message read. Across the street. Victor didn't hesitate this time. Where are you? He typed back. 3 dots appeared. Paused. Then. Asterisk, I'm almost home. I didn't want to bother you. Asterisk. Victor exhaled slowly. You're not bothering me, he wrote. Asterisk, stay inside. Lock the door. I'm nearby. Asterisk. He grabbed his keys before he could talk himself out of it. As he stepped into the hallway, Victor understood something he hadn't fully accepted yet. This wasn't about doing the right thing anymore. This was about whether he was willing to face the consequences of stepping into someone else's fear, and not being able to step back out. Danielle locked the door behind her and leaned her forehead against the wood, counting her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Her apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in with every sound from outside. A car passed. Someone laughed on the sidewalk below. Normal noises, but her body refused to treat them as harmless. She checked the deadbolt, then checked it again. Her phone rested in her palm, Victor's last message still glowing on the screen. I'm nearby. She didn't know why that helped. She didn't know why she told him Leonard was outside instead of calling the police or her sister, or no one at all like she'd done before. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way Victor hadn't asked questions that felt like traps. She moved through the apartment, turning on lamps, avoiding the windows. When she finally sat on the edge of her couch, she felt like she'd aged 10 years since that afternoon. Another buzz. I'm downstairs, Victor wrote. Don't come out. Her heart jumped. You didn't have to do that, she typed. I know, came the reply. But I did. Minutes stretched. Danielle stared at the door, imagining Leonard's face on the other side, his voice slipping through the crack the way it used to. She hated that part of herself. The part that still expected him, still braced for impact. Then her phone rang. Victor. She answered on the first ring. I'm here, she said before he could speak. I know, he replied. His voice was steady. He's gone. Her chest tightened. You're sure? I watched him leave, Victor said. He didn't see me. Silence filled the space between them. I'm sorry, Danielle said quietly. I shouldn't have. Stop, Victor interrupted gently. You didn't do anything wrong. She swallowed. You don't know him. I know enough, he said. And I know when someone's not safe. She hesitated, then asked the question she'd been avoiding. What did you say to him? Victor paused. Nothing threatening. That's not what I asked. I told him to leave you alone, Victor said. I told him people were paying attention now. Her stomach twisted. That could make it worse. I know, he admitted. But pretending he doesn't exist won't make him disappear either. Danielle closed her eyes. She hated how true that sounded. I'll stay close tonight, Victor added. Just in case. You don't have to do that, she said again, though part of her hoped he would. I want to, he replied. I won't come up. I won't cross any lines. But I'll be here. She nodded even though he couldn't see it. Thank you. After the call ended, Danielle sat in the quiet, her body slowly unwinding. For the first time in hours, her shoulders dropped. She didn't feel safe. Not fully. But she felt less alone. She slept on the couch with the lights on. When morning came, sunlight spilled across the floor, soft and ordinary. For a moment she forgot. Then her phone buzzed on the coffee table and reality settled back into place. A text from Victor. Asterisk, he didn't come back. Are you okay? Asterisk. She typed back, I think so. Another message followed almost immediately. Asterisk, can we talk later? Somewhere public. Asterisk. She hesitated. Agreeing felt like stepping deeper into something she didn't understand. Saying no felt like retreating into the same isolation Leonard had thrived on. Okay, she wrote. After my shift, they met at a small cafe near the river that afternoon. It was busy, loud enough to feel safe. Victor arrived first, standing when she walked in, offering a smile that didn't demand anything. You look tired, he said. She snorted softly. You don't. He gestured to the chair. Perks of insomnia and bad habits. They ordered coffee. Sat in silence for a moment. I need to be clear, Danielle said finally. I didn't ask you to take this on. I know, Victor replied. But I'm here now. That doesn't always end well, she said. He met her gaze. I'm not here to rescue you. Then why are you here? Victor exhaled slowly. Because I've seen what happens when people with power look away. And because he's counting on you being alone. Her fingers tightened around her cup. You don't know what he's capable of. Victor's expression darkened slightly. Neither do I. And that's the problem. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Outside, a siren wailed briefly, then faded. Life went on. Danielle stared at Victor, realizing something unsettling. By stepping in again, he hadn't just scared Leonard off. He'd put himself directly in Leonard's line of sight. And if Leonard felt cornered, there was no telling who he'd decide to punish first. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon pastries, a comforting mix that usually softened Danielle's nerves. Today it barely touched them. She stirred her coffee long after the sugar had dissolved, watching the surface ripple and settle, ripple and settle. Victor sat across from her, hands folded loosely, posture relaxed in a way that felt practiced. Not casual. Controlled. You don't have to keep meeting me, she said finally. You've already done more than enough. Victor didn't answer right away. He looked past her, through the wide front window where pedestrians moved in steady streams, lives intersecting for seconds and then separating again. I know, he said. That's why I'm letting you set the pace. She glanced up, surprised. You are. He nodded. I'm not here to decide things for you. Danielle let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Leonard decides things for people, she said. That's his favorite part. Victor's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. She continued, words coming faster now. He doesn't yell right away. He waits. He shows up where you don't expect him. He makes sure you know he could do worse if he wanted to. Victor listened. No interruptions. No reassurance that felt hollow. I don't want him thinking you're leverage, she said. Victor met her gaze. I don't intend to be. That's not always up to you. A faint smile touched his mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're right. They finished their drinks mostly in silence. When they stood to leave, Danielle hesitated at the door. I'm walking home, she said. Alone. Victor nodded immediately. Okay. No argument. No insistence. As she stepped outside, the cold air hit her face, sharp and grounding. She took a few steps, then paused, glancing back. Victor stood just inside the cafe, visible through the glass. Not following. Just there. She walked away. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. Leonard didn't appear. No texts. No calls. No shadow across the street. That should have been a relief. Instead, it made Danielle uneasy. Silence from Leonard was never neutral. It was a pause, not an ending. Victor respected her distance. Too much, maybe. A check-in text every couple of days. Nothing more. When she replied, he kept it brief. When she didn't, he didn't push. That restraint confused her more than attention would have. At work, life went on. Customers complained about wine temperatures and wait times. Coworkers gossiped. The city outside kept moving. Danielle found herself laughing at a joke during pre-shift and then stopping mid-laugh, startled by the sound of it. One evening, as she wiped down a table near the window, her coworker Jamal leaned in. You good? He asked quietly. She nodded. Yeah. Why? He tilted his head toward the bar. You keep checking the door. She forced a smile. Occupational hazard. Jamal studied her for a moment, then shrugged. You know we got your back here, right? Her throat tightened. I know. That night, as she stepped outside after closing, her phone buzzed. You home yet? Victor texted. She hesitated, then typed back. Almost. A moment passed. I'll stay nearby, he replied. Just in case. She didn't respond. But she didn't tell him not to either. The first real crack came a week later. Danielle was on her break, sitting on a milk crate behind the restaurant, scrolling aimlessly on her phone, when a news alert popped up. She almost ignored it. The headline stopped her cold. Langford Industries CEO faces internal review amid whistleblower claims. Her stomach dropped. She clicked the article, heart pounding, and there he was. Victor. In a sharply lit photo she'd never seen before. Serious expression. A man who looked nothing like the quiet presence at her table or the voice on the phone. Billionaire. The word appeared 3 paragraphs in, stark and undeniable. Danielle's pulse roared in her ears. She read the article twice, then a third time, her hands shaking. Everything reframed itself at once. The manager's tone that night. The way Leonard had stiffened. The immediate authority Victor carried without raising his voice. Power. Real power. She locked her phone and stared at the alley wall, the bricks chipped and stained, grounding in their roughness. Her chest felt tight, breath shallow. Had she ever really had a choice that night? Her phone buzzed again. Victor. She didn't open it. She stood, tossed her apron back on, and returned to work like nothing had happened. But the world felt different now, tilted in a way she couldn't ignore. When her shift ended, she walked home without checking her phone. She didn't answer Victor's messages that night. Or the next day. On the third day, a knock sounded on her door. Soft, polite. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She approached the door slowly, every sense alert. Peered through the peephole. Victor stood in the hallway, hands visible, expression careful. Relief and fear collided in her chest. She didn't open the door. Danielle, he said gently through the wood. I should have told you. Her voice shook as she answered. You think? Silence stretched between them. I didn't want it to change how you saw me, Victor said. She closed her eyes. It already had. And somewhere deep down, she knew Leonard would find a way to use that change against both of them. Danielle kept her back against the door long after Victor stopped speaking. The hallway outside was quiet. No raised voices. No anger. Just the muted hum of the building's old lights and the distant sound of an elevator somewhere below. Ordinary sounds. The kind that usually meant safety. She didn't feel safe. You should go, she said through the door. I will, Victor replied immediately. I just wanted you to hear it from me. Hear what? She asked, sharper than she meant to. That you're not who I thought you were? Another pause. Longer this time. I am, he said. And I'm not. Both can be true. Danielle pressed her forehead against the doorframe. You don't get to decide that. I know, Victor said quietly. That's why I'm leaving. She listened as his footsteps retreated down the hall. Only when she heard the elevator ding did she unlock the deadbolt and step back, as if distance might protect her from the truth settling in. Billionaire. Geo. Under investigation. Those words replayed in her mind, colliding with memories she could no longer see clearly. The chair at the restaurant. His arm around her waist. The way the manager's voice had shifted when he said Victor's name. Power hadn't just been present that night. It had been decisive. For the next 2 days, Danielle avoided everything that reminded her of him. She muted news alerts. She left her phone face down on the counter. She took longer routes home even when she knew Leonard wasn't nearby. Control, she reminded herself, came in many forms. At work, Victor didn't appear. That should have reassured her. Instead, it left a hollow space she resented. On the third night, her manager pulled her aside before closing. Hey, he said gently. Everything okay? She nodded automatically. Yeah. He hesitated. I know I said this before, but if anyone's bothering you, we can file an incident report. Formal one. Her stomach tightened. Did someone say something? No, he said. Just checking. She thanked him and finished her shift, her thoughts tangled. Leonard with a lawyer. Victor with influence. Systems that moved when certain names were spoken and stalled when others weren't. Walking home, she felt the familiar prickle of awareness. Not fear exactly. Expectation. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You really think hiding behind him changes anything? Her breath caught. Another message followed immediately. Asterisk, we need to talk. Properly. Tomorrow. Asterisk. She stared at the screen, hands shaking. The number wasn't saved, but she didn't need it to know who it was. Leonard. Her instinct was to block the number. To throw the phone across the room. To pretend she'd never seen it. Instead, she did something she hadn't planned. She opened her contacts and scrolled. Victor. Her thumb hovered over the name. She hated that she needed him. Hated that Leonard had forced the choice into existence. But fear had a way of clarifying priorities. She typed a short message. He knows about you. The reply came faster than she expected. Where are you? Home. Asterisk, I'm coming. We'll talk first. Asterisk. She almost told him not to. Almost insisted she could handle it alone. But Leonard had said tomorrow. And tomorrow suddenly felt too close. She locked her door, checked the windows, and waited. When Victor arrived, he didn't knock this time. He texted. I'm outside. Danielle opened the door just enough to see him standing there, expression tense but controlled. Come in, she said. The moment the door closed behind him, the air shifted. No pretending. No distance. He texted me, she said, holding up her phone. He knows who you are. Victor read the messages, his jaw tightening. This is escalation. That's his favorite part, Danielle said bitterly. Making things feel inevitable. Victor looked at her. Really looked at her. We don't respond tonight. He said tomorrow. Tomorrow is not a deadline, Victor said. It's a tactic. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. You talk like this is a board meeting? His expression flickered. I know. That was the first time she saw it, the crack. The awareness that his power didn't make this clean or simple. That it might make it worse. What if he shows up here? She asked. Victor didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was lower. Then we document everything. We don't meet him alone. And we don't let him control the terms. Danielle sank onto the couch. I didn't want this. I know, Victor said softly. Silence stretched between them, heavy but shared. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Danielle flinched. Victor noticed. I'll stay, he said. On the couch. No pressure. She nodded, too tired to argue. As the night deepened, Danielle stared at the ceiling, sleep refusing to come. Leonard's message replayed in her head, twisted now by something new. He wasn't just watching her anymore. He was watching Victor. And power, she was beginning to understand, didn't scare men like Leonard. It challenged them. Danielle woke just before dawn to the sound of someone shifting in the living room. Her body reacted before her mind did. Heart racing, muscles tense, she sat up, listening. The apartment was dim, gray light leaking through the curtains. Then she remembered. Victor. She exhaled slowly and lay back down, staring at the ceiling until her pulse steadied. She hadn't slept much. Dreams came in fragments, hallways without exits, doors that wouldn't lock, Leonard's voice echoing from somewhere she couldn't see. When she finally got up, Victor was already awake, standing by the window with a mug of coffee she didn't remember offering him. I hope that's okay, he said quietly when he noticed her. I found a mug that looked clean. She nodded. That's fine. They stood there for a moment, unsure of where to put their eyes. The intimacy of the space felt heavier in daylight. At night, everything had been about urgency and fear. Morning stripped that away and left only the reality of what they were doing. Victor broke the silence. He hasn't contacted you again? She checked her phone. No new messages. Not yet. That doesn't mean he won't, Victor said. I know. They talked logistics over toast neither of them really wanted. If Leonard showed up, she wouldn't open the door. If he called, she wouldn't answer. Everything would be documented. Screenshots. Times. Dates. It sounded smart. Reasonable. It also sounded like planning around a storm instead of stopping it. When Victor left mid-morning, he didn't linger. "Call me if anything changes," he said. Not a command. An offer. After he was gone, the apartment felt quieter than before. Not peaceful. Exposed. Danielle tried to focus on normal things. Laundry. Dishes. A half-watched show playing in the background. But her attention kept drifting to the door, to the window, to the phone lying face up on the table like a loaded question. The message came just after noon. "You've got a talent for picking protectors," Leonard wrote. "Let's see how long this one lasts." Her throat tightened. She stared at the words until they blurred. She didn't respond. At work that evening, the tension followed her like a second uniform. She moved through the dining room with practiced ease, but every time the door opened, her body braced. Her coworkers noticed. They asked if she was okay. She smiled and said yes. Lying had become easier than explaining. Victor didn't come in that night. She was grateful and disappointed at the same time. Halfway through the shift, the host leaned toward her. "There's a guy asking for you." Danielle's stomach dropped. "What guy?" "Didn't give a name," the host said. Said it was personal. Her pulse roared in her ears. "Where is he?" "By the bar." She didn't need to see him to know. But she did anyway. Leonard stood near the bar like he belonged there, jacket draped casually over his arm. He looked relaxed. Confident. Like this was his territory. Danielle felt something cold settle in her chest. She didn't approach him. She turned and walked straight to the manager's office. "He's here," she said. "The man from before. The one I told you about." The manager's expression hardened. "Okay. Stay here." Through the cracked door, Danielle heard voices. Leonard's smooth tone. The manager's clipped responses. Pause. Then footsteps. Leonard passed the office without looking at her, escorted toward the exit. Just before the doors closed, he turned his head slightly. Their eyes met. He smiled. That smile stayed with her long after he was gone. After her shift, Victor called. "He tried to see you," she said before he could ask. "I know," Victor replied. "Someone tipped me off." "Someone," she repeated. Victor didn't elaborate. "This is pressure," he said. "He's trying to force a reaction." "Well, it's working," Danielle snapped, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry. I'm just tired." "I know," Victor said gently. "So am I." There was a pause. "He mentioned you," Danielle said. "In a message." Victor's voice tightened. "What did he say?" "That you were a protector," she said. Like it was an insult. Victor exhaled slowly. "To him it is." "Why?" she asked. "Because it means he's not the only one watching anymore." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made her uneasy. That night, lying in bed, Danielle realized something she hadn't allowed herself to think before. Leonard didn't want her back. He wanted control. And Victor, for all his calm and careful rules, had stepped directly into a contest that wasn't about her safety anymore. It was about dominance. And she was the ground they were fighting over. The business card felt heavier in Danielle's hand than it had any right to. She stood in front of her locker in the cramped employee room at Rivers and Rye, fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead, staring at the name printed in clean black letters. Victor Langford. She'd taken the card out that morning, intending to throw it away. That had been the plan. Simple. Final. But instead, she'd slid it into her jacket pocket like a bad habit she couldn't break. All day, her thoughts kept circling back to the same question. Had she ever really chosen him? She replayed that night again, slower now, with details sharpened by everything she knew. The way the manager's voice had shifted. The immediate compliance. The way Leonard's confidence had cracked. Not because of her words, but because of Victor's name. At the time, she thought she was choosing safety. Now she wondered if safety had chosen her. During pre-shift, Jamal nudged her gently with his elbow. "You good today, Dee?" She forced a smile. "I'm here, aren't I?" He raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't answer the question." She shrugged. "Long week." "Yeah," he said. "Haven't we all?" The room filled with chatter as servers grabbed trays and checked sections. Danielle tucked the card back into her pocket, its edges pressing against her thigh like a reminder she couldn't ignore. On the floor, the restaurant glowed with its usual quiet confidence. Low lighting. Soft music. The illusion that nothing bad ever happened in places like this. Victor didn't come in. She told herself she was glad. Still, every time the front door opened, her eyes lifted automatically. Leonard didn't appear either. The absence of both men created a strange imbalance, like waiting for a sound that never came. Midway through the shift, Danielle's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She didn't need to look to know who it was. She waited until she reached the service station before checking. "I didn't mean to put you in this position," Victor had written. "I should have been honest from the start." Her jaw tightened. Apologies came easily to people who weren't used to consequences. She typed, deleted, typed again. "I didn't ask to be part of whatever this is." A minute passed. Then, neither did I. But here we are, That response unsettled her more than reassurance would have. Later, during a lull, the manager approached her quietly. "You holding up?" She nodded. "Yeah." He hesitated. "If that guy comes back, we'll handle it." She asked. He gave a small, uncomfortable smile. "The restaurant." She knew what he meant. The rules. The policies. The careful steps that only activated when things became inconvenient enough. "Thank you," she said anyway. After closing, Danielle didn't take the bus. She walked. The night air was cool, the city alive in its usual fragmented way. She passed couples laughing, someone arguing on the phone, a street musician packing up for the night. Life continued, indifferent to her internal storm. Halfway home she felt it again. That subtle tightening. That sense of being watched. She slowed her pace, scanning reflections in darkened windows. Nothing. She reached her building and unlocked the door quickly, slipping inside and locking it behind her. Only when she leaned back against it did she realize her hands were shaking. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Victor. A known number. Her chest tightened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," the message read. "I just want a conversation." She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Another message followed. "You always did that. Ran when things got uncomfortable." Her throat burned. She typed a response, then erased it. Typed again. Erased that too. Instead, she opened her photos and took screenshots of the messages. Saved them. Labeled them with the date. Control, Victor had said, came from documentation. Her phone rang immediately after. "Leonard." She let it ring. It stopped. Started again. She silenced it and set the phone face down on the table, breathing through the surge of adrenaline. Her apartment felt too quiet. Too exposed. A knock sounded at the door. Not loud. Not aggressive. 3 soft taps. Her blood ran cold. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. The knock came again, slower this time. "Danielle?" a voice said gently through the wood. Not Leonard. Victor. Relief and anger collided so hard it made her dizzy. She approached the door cautiously. "What are you doing here?" "I got a message forwarded to me," Victor said. "From the restaurant manager. Leonard called earlier. Asked for your schedule." Her stomach dropped. "He what?" "I didn't want to tell you over text," Victor said. "I thought you should know in person." She unlocked the door and opened it just enough to look at him. His expression was serious, no trace of the calm confidence she'd grown used to. "He's not waiting anymore," Victor said quietly. "He's moving." Danielle's grip tightened on the doorframe. Moving meant planning. Planning meant escalation. And for the first time since this started, she understood something with terrifying clarity. Leonard wasn't reacting to fear. He was reacting to a challenge. And challenges to men like him only ever ended one way. Danielle didn't invite Victor in right away. She stood half behind the door, the chain still latched, studying his face like she was trying to read something written between the lines. He looked different tonight. Less polished. His jacket was wrinkled, his hair slightly out of place, like he'd come straight from somewhere else without stopping to think. "Did you tell anyone else?" she asked. "No," Victor said. "Only you." "Not the police?" "Not yet." That answer landed heavier than she expected. She unhooked the chain and stepped back. Victor entered quietly, instinctively scanning the apartment like he was mapping exits. Danielle noticed. She always noticed things like that now. He didn't sit. Neither did she. Leonard calling the restaurant played over and over in her head. Asking for her schedule. Saying it out loud made it feel more real. Less like paranoia. More like a pattern closing in. How did the manager even know to call you? She asked. Victor hesitated. Just long enough. I left my number with him, he said. After the first incident. Her chest tightened. You didn't tell me that. I didn't think it would matter, Victor replied. I was wrong. Silence filled the room. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Danielle folded her arms, grounding herself. You keep doing that. Doing what? Deciding things for me, she said. Calling it protection. Victor's jaw clenched. If I hadn't. If you hadn't what? She cut in. Stepped in? Thrown your name around? Do you think that made this smaller? He exhaled slowly. No. I think it made it visible. That's not the same thing as safer. They stood there, the distance between them suddenly loaded with unspoken questions. Why are you really helping me? Danielle asked. Victor looked at her, really looked this time. Not like a problem to solve. Like a person who might not accept the answer. Because I've seen this before, he said. And because I didn't stop it soon enough then. She waited. There was a woman, he continued. Years ago. Different circumstances. Same kind of man. Danielle's throat tightened. What happened to her? Victor's gaze dropped to the floor. She moved. Changed jobs. Changed her number. Thought distance would fix it. And he followed, Victor said quietly. Not right away. Slowly. Patiently. Danielle felt cold spread through her arms. She survived, Victor added quickly. But it changed her. The way she lived. The way she trusted. Danielle swallowed. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, he said. It's supposed to make you careful. She turned away, walking to the window. Outside, the street looked ordinary. A couple arguing softly on the corner. A delivery truck double parked. Normal life happening inches away from her fear. You can't fight him for me, she said. I know. But you are, she said, turning back. Whether you admit it or not. Victor didn't deny it. Leonard doesn't respect boundaries, he said. He respects leverage. And you think you're leverage. I know I am. That certainty scared her more than doubt would have. Then what happens when he decides you're in the way? She asked. Victor met her eyes. That's already happened. A knock interrupted them. Sure. Loud. 3 quick raps. Both of them froze. Victor moved first, placing himself slightly in front of Danielle without touching her. His hand lowered, palm open, steady. Stay back, he murmured. Danielle's heart hammered as she stared at the door. The knock came again. This is Officer Ramirez, a voice called out. Apartment 3B. Relief rushed through her so fast it made her dizzy. She rushed forward, then stopped herself, forcing calm into her movements as she opened the door. A uniformed officer stood in the hallway, notepad in hand. We got a call about a disturbance in the area, he said. Your neighbor reported raised voices earlier. Danielle shook her head. We were just talking. The officer glanced past her, taking in Victor. Everything okay here? Yes, she said. Everything's fine. The officer studied her face for a moment longer than felt comfortable, then nodded. All right. If anything changes, don't hesitate to call. After he left, Danielle leaned against the door, exhaling shakily. That wasn't him, she said. No, Victor agreed. But it tells us something. What? That he's close enough to make you jump, Victor said. Which means we don't have much time before he does something that forces your hand. Danielle closed her eyes. She didn't know what scared her more. Leonard making his next move. Or the growing realization that Victor might already be planning one of his own. Danielle didn't invite Victor in right away. She stood half behind the door, the chain still latched, studying his face like she was trying to read something written between the lines. He looked different tonight. Less polished. His jacket was wrinkled, his hair slightly out of place, like he'd come straight from somewhere else without stopping to think. "Did you tell anyone else?" she asked. "No," Victor said. "Only you." "Not the police?" "Not yet." That answer landed heavier than she expected. She unhooked the chain and stepped back. Victor entered quietly, instinctively scanning the apartment like he was mapping exits. Danielle noticed. She always noticed things like that now. He didn't sit. Neither did she. Leonard calling the restaurant played over and over in her head. Asking for her schedule. Saying it out loud made it feel more real. Less like paranoia. More like a pattern closing in. "How did the manager even know to call you?" she asked. Victor hesitated. "Just long enough. I left my number with him," he said. "After the first incident." Her chest tightened. "You didn't tell me that." "I didn't think it would matter," Victor replied. "I was wrong." Silence filled the room. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Danielle folded her arms, grounding herself. "You keep doing that." "Doing what?" "Deciding things for me," she said. "Calling it protection." Victor's jaw clenched. "If I hadn't..." "If you hadn't what?" she cut in. "Stepped in? Thrown your name around? Do you think that made this smaller?" He exhaled slowly. "No. I think it made it visible." "That's not the same thing as safer." They stood there, the distance between them suddenly loaded with unspoken questions. "Why are you really helping me?" Danielle asked. Victor looked at her, really looked this time. Not like a problem to solve. Like a person who might not accept the answer. "Because I've seen this before," he said. "And because I didn't stop it soon enough then." She waited. "There was a woman," he continued. "Years ago. Different circumstances. Same kind of man." Danielle's throat tightened. "What happened to her?" Victor's gaze dropped to the floor. "She moved. Changed jobs. Changed her number. Thought distance would fix it. And he followed," Victor said quietly. "Not right away. Slowly. Patiently." Danielle felt cold spread through her arms. "She survived," Victor added quickly. "But it changed her. The way she lived. The way she trusted." Danielle swallowed. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No," he said. "It's supposed to make you careful." She turned away, walking to the window. Outside, the street looked ordinary. A couple arguing softly on the corner. A delivery truck double-parked. Normal life, happening inches away from her fear. "You can't fight him for me," she said. "I know." "But you are," she said, turning back. "Whether you admit it or not." Victor didn't deny it. "Leonard doesn't respect boundaries," he said. "He respects leverage. And you think you're leverage." "I know I am." That certainty scared her more than doubt would have. "Then what happens when he decides you're in the way?" she asked. Victor met her eyes. "That's already happened." A knock interrupted them. "Sure." Loud. 3 quick raps. Both of them froze. Victor moved first, placing himself slightly in front of Danielle without touching her. His hand lowered, palm open, steady. "Stay back," he murmured. Danielle's heart hammered as she stared at the door. The knock came again. "This is Officer Ramirez," a voice called out. "Apartment 3B. Relief rushed through her so fast it made her dizzy. She rushed forward, then stopped herself, forcing calm into her movements as she opened the door. A uniformed officer stood in the hallway, notepad in hand. "We got a call about a disturbance in the area," he said. "Your neighbor reported raised voices earlier." Danielle shook her head. "We were just talking." The officer glanced past her, taking in Victor. "Everything okay here?" "Yes," she said. "Everything's fine." The officer studied her face for a moment longer than felt comfortable, then nodded. "All right. If anything changes, don't hesitate to call." After he left, Danielle leaned against the door, exhaling shakily. "That wasn't him," she said. "No," Victor agreed. "But it tells us something." "What?" "That he's close enough to make you jump," Victor said. "Which means we don't have much time before he does something that forces your hand." Danielle closed her eyes. She didn't know what scared her more. Leonard making his next move. or the growing realization that Victor might already be planning one of his own. Danielle barely slept. Every sound felt amplified. The click of the heater. Footsteps in the hallway. A car door slamming somewhere outside that made her sit up, breath caught halfway in her chest. By morning, exhaustion pressed behind her eyes like a dull ache. Victor had left just after midnight. Not because she asked him to, because staying would have made things heavier than they already were. He'd paused at the door. "I'll keep some distance," he'd said. "But I won't disappear." She hadn't answered. She wasn't sure what she wanted from him anymore. At work the next day the restaurant felt different. Not hostile. Careful. The manager checked in twice. Jamal hovered a little closer than usual. Even customers seemed louder, sharper, like the room itself had turned up its volume. Halfway through the lunch rush, Danielle noticed a woman sitting alone near the window. Late 40s maybe. Professional clothes. Coffee untouched. She was watching Danielle. Not staring exactly. Observing. Like she was waiting for the right moment. When the rush slowed, the woman raised a hand slightly. "Excuse me." Danielle approached, forcing a neutral smile. "Can I get you anything else?" The woman shook her head. "I don't think so. I was actually hoping to speak with you." Danielle's pulse quickened. "About what?" The woman reached into her purse and slid a card across the table. "My name is Elaine Turner. I'm an attorney." Danielle didn't pick up the card. "I'm at work." "I know," Elaine said calmly. "This won't take long." Danielle glanced toward the manager, then back. "Okay." Elaine leaned in just slightly. "Leonard contacted my office yesterday." The name hit like a physical blow. "He's seeking advice," Elaine continued, voice steady, "regarding what he calls harassment and interference in a personal relationship." Danielle let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're kidding." "I'm not," Elaine said. "I declined to represent him." That got her attention. "Why?" "Because the documentation he provided raised concerns," Elaine replied. "And because someone else contacted me shortly after." Danielle's stomach dropped. "Who?" Elaine met her eyes. "Victor Langford." "Of course he did." "He asked me to review your situation independently," Elaine said. "Not to act on his behalf. To assess risk." Danielle crossed her arms. "So now I'm being assessed." "No," Elaine said gently. "You're being informed." She slid the card closer. "Leonard is laying groundwork. Not for reconciliation. For narrative control." Danielle swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means he wants to look reasonable before he escalates," Elaine said. "People like him don't move randomly. They move in ways that protect their image." Danielle thought of Leonard's smile at the restaurant. The way he never raised his voice. "He's going to say I'm unstable," Danielle said quietly. Elaine nodded. "Likely. And that Victor is manipulating me. Also likely." Danielle picked up the card finally, fingers trembling. "So what do I do?" Elaine hesitated. "That depends on how far you're willing to go to protect yourself." Danielle didn't answer. That evening Victor called. She let it ring once before answering. "She came to see you," he said. "You sent her," Danielle replied. "I asked her to check in," Victor corrected. "She decided how to do that." "You could have told me." "I didn't want to scare you." Danielle laughed softly. That ship sailed. They sat in silence for a moment, the line open between them. "He's building a case," Danielle said. "Against me?" "Yes," Victor replied. "And you're part of it whether you like it or not." Victor didn't argue. "That's why I need to tell you something," he said. Her chest tightened. "What?" "There's a reason Leonard reacts to my name," Victor said. "A specific one." Danielle closed her eyes. "I figured." "He and I crossed paths years ago," Victor continued. "Not socially. Professionally." "What does that mean?" "It means I know how far he's willing to go when he feels challenged," Victor said. "And it means he knows I won't back down quietly." "That's not comforting." "It's honest," Victor said. Danielle pressed her fingers into her palm. "You're not just helping me because you feel bad." "No," Victor admitted. I'm helping you because I stopped him once. Her breath caught. Stopped him how? Victor paused. By doing something I promised myself I'd never do again. The line went quiet. Victor, Danielle said slowly. What did you do? He didn't answer right away. And in that silence, Danielle felt the shape of the truth forming, heavy, complicated, and dangerous. Whatever Victor had done before wasn't just history. It was unfinished. Victor didn't answer her question that night. The call ended with a quiet, careful goodbye, the kind people use when they're afraid anything more might open a door they can't close again. Danielle sat on the edge of her couch long after, phone resting in her palm like it might vibrate if she waited hard enough. It didn't. Sleep came in thin, broken strips. When morning arrived, it felt like she'd barely left the surface. She called in sick. It was the first time she'd done that in over a year, and the guilt came automatically, layered over fear like a reflex she couldn't turn off. But she couldn't stand the idea of being in public today. Of smiling. Of pretending her life wasn't quietly being rearranged by people who spoke in calm voices and made dangerous decisions. By late morning, she was sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop open, a legal pad beside it. Elaine's card lay between them. She stared at it for a long time before dialing. Elaine answered on the second ring. Danielle. I need to understand something, Danielle said. Not as a client. As a person. Elaine paused. All right. What does it mean when you say Leonard is controlling the narrative? It means he's preparing an audience, Elaine said. Friends, co-workers, authorities, anyone who might be listening later. And Victor? Danielle asked. Where does he fit into that? Elaine exhaled softly. Victor complicates things. How? Because Leonard doesn't see him as an outside helper, Elaine said. He sees him as an adversary with history. Danielle's fingers tightened around the pen. You know what happened between them? I know pieces, Elaine replied carefully. Enough to know this isn't theoretical. Danielle swallowed. Victor said he stopped Leonard once. Yes, Elaine said. And Leonard didn't forget. The words settled like dust, quiet but unavoidable. Should I be afraid of Victor? Danielle asked. Elaine didn't answer immediately. Fear isn't the right word, she said finally. But you should be aware of what motivates him. And what's that? Responsibility, Elaine said. And guilt. Danielle hung up feeling less informed than she'd hoped and more exposed than before. The knock came just after noon. She froze. Another knock followed, firmer this time. Danielle? Victor's voice called softly. It's me. She stood slowly, every instinct screaming at her to stay still, to stay silent. But curiosity pulled her forward. She opened the door just enough to see him. He looked tired. Not just physically. Like someone who hadn't rested in a long time. I won't come in unless you ask, he said. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Victor entered and stopped near the doorway, respecting the boundary without being told. Danielle noticed again how deliberate his movements were. Nothing wasted. Nothing impulsive. You deserve an answer, he said. About what I did. She crossed her arms, bracing herself. Go on. Leonard used to work with a company I advised, Victor said. Financially. Strategically. Danielle frowned. You're not a lawyer. No, Victor said. I manage risk. That explained more than she liked. Leonard was pushing people, Victor continued. Employees. Partners. Women he was involved with. He stayed just inside the lines. And you pushed back. I documented everything, Victor said. Patterns. Complaints. Behavior no one wanted to name. Danielle's pulse quickened. And when it reached a point where someone was going to get seriously hurt, I intervened, Victor said. Not publicly. Quietly. How? I made sure his access disappeared, Victor said. Funding. Support. Influence. Danielle stared at him. You destroyed his career. Victor shook his head. He did that himself. I just removed the cover. And now, she asked. He's back. Yes. And you think this is about revenge? Victor met her eyes. I think it's about control. And pride. She laughed softly, humorless. So I'm collateral damage. No, Victor said firmly. You're the trigger. The word echoed in her chest. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the table. A known number. They both looked at it. Danielle picked it up, hands steady now in a way they hadn't been all week. A photo filled the screen. It was her apartment building. Taken from across the street. Time stamped 10 minutes ago. Beneath it, a message. We should really talk. Victor's jaw tightened. Danielle felt something inside her shift, not into panic but into clarity. He's not testing boundaries anymore, she said quietly. Victor nodded. No. He wants a reaction. Yes. Danielle locked the phone and set it down. Then we don't give him the one he wants. Victor studied her, something like respect flickering across his face. Okay, he said. But understand this. What? From this point on, Victor said, voice low and steady, every move matters. Outside, somewhere down the block, a car door slammed. Danielle moved to the window. And for just a second, she thought she saw Leonard standing near the corner, watching the building like he had all the time in the world. Danielle didn't see Leonard when she looked again. The corner was empty. Just a trash can tipped on its side and a bus pulling away with a hiss of air. Still, the image stayed lodged in her mind, vivid enough to feel real. She stepped back from the window slowly. Victor was watching her, reading the shift in her posture. Did you see him? I don't know, she said. Maybe. That's enough, Victor replied. He didn't rush to conclusions, but his shoulders tightened, the way someone reacts when a theory becomes a probability. Danielle picked up her phone again, opening the photo Leonard had sent. The angle was deliberate, not threatening, informational. A reminder that he could be close without being obvious. He wants me to respond, she said. Silence is making him impatient. Yes, Victor said. But responding gives him proof of access. She paced the small living room, arms folded tight around herself. So what do I do? Pretend I didn't see it? For now, Victor said. We focus on reducing exposure. Meaning? Meaning you don't stay here tonight. Her head snapped up. No. Danielle? This is my apartment, she said. I won't be chased out of it. Victor held up a hand. I'm not asking you to disappear. I'm asking you to sleep somewhere Leonard doesn't expect. She stopped pacing. Where? He hesitated. I have a place. The words landed awkwardly between them. No, she said immediately. That's a terrible idea. I agree, Victor said. Which is why I wouldn't suggest it unless I thought the alternative was worse. Danielle exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. This is exactly what I mean. You keep narrowing my options. I'm trying to keep you ahead of him, Victor replied. He's escalating. Photos mean proximity. Proximity means confidence. And what about tomorrow? She asked. The day after that? We plan, Victor said. With help. Elaine is already involved. We loop in local resources. Not dramatic ones. Practical ones. She looked at him. You mean police? I mean documentation that becomes difficult to ignore. Danielle thought of the officer at her door. The careful neutrality. The way nothing happened until something did. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail notification. Leonard. Victor didn't tell her not to listen. He didn't need to. She pressed play. Hey, Leonard's voice said, smooth as ever. I don't like how this is going. I don't like surprises. I think we owe each other a conversation face to face. No middlemen. No games. Just you and me like adults. The message ended with a soft click. Danielle stared at the screen. He's reframing, Victor said quietly. Making this about maturity. He always did that, Danielle said. Anytime I tried to set a boundary, he'd act like I was being dramatic. That's why he's dangerous, Victor replied. He sounds reasonable. She sank onto the couch. If I go with you tonight, it looks like I'm choosing sides. You already have, Victor said gently. You just haven't named it. She looked up at him sharply. I didn't ask for this. I know. And if this ends badly, she said, it won't be because of something I did. No, Victor agreed. It'll be because Leonard doesn't tolerate losing control. The silence stretched. Finally, Danielle stood. I'll pack a bag. One night. Victor nodded. That's all I'm asking. She moved through the apartment slowly, taking only essentials. Clothes, charger, toothbrush. The legal pad with dates and times scribbled in the margins. Each item felt like an admission. At the door, she hesitated, looking back at the space that had been hers alone until recently. Wait, she said suddenly. Victor turned. She lifted her phone. If he texts again, I want to respond. Victor's brow furrowed. That could backfire. I know, she said. But not the way he expects. She typed carefully, each word measured. Asterisk, I'm not avoiding you. I'm choosing distance. Do not contact me again. Asterisk. She didn't add anything else. No emotion. No explanation. Then she sent it. They both watched the screen. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then disappeared. Victor's phone buzzed at the same time. He checked it, his expression tightening. He forwarded your message to someone, Victor said. Who? A private investigator, Victor replied. The same one he used years ago. Danielle felt the weight of that settle in her chest. So this isn't just personal, she said. No, Victor said. It's strategic. They stepped into the hallway together, the door closing softly behind them. As the lock clicked into place, Danielle had the sudden, unsettling thought that she wasn't leaving her apartment for safety. She was leaving because the game had finally begun. Victor's building was quieter than Danielle expected. Not empty, just controlled. A mid-rise with security cameras at the entrances, clean hallways, neutral colors that didn't invite questions. The kind of place where people nodded politely and kept their lives contained. This isn't a hotel, Danielle said as the elevator rose. You actually live here. Victor gave a small smile. Most of the time. The doors opened onto a short hallway. He unlocked the door at the end, stepped aside to let her enter first. She noticed that too. The consistent refusal to put himself ahead of her. Inside, the apartment was spare but warm. Bookshelves lined one wall. A large window overlooked the city, lights flickering like distant signals. No personal photos. No clutter. Everything had a purpose. You can take the bedroom, Victor said. I'll use the couch. She set her bag down slowly. You don't have to do that. I know, he replied. I'm still going to. They didn't talk much after that. Danielle showered, letting the hot water pound tension out of her shoulders. When she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, she noticed a folded sweatshirt on the bed. Clean. Oversized. For sleeping, Victor's voice called from the living room. In case you don't want to wear street clothes. Something about the normalcy of that gesture made her chest tighten. Later, lying in bed, Danielle stared at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of Victor moving around outside the room. The click of a lamp. The low murmur of a phone call she couldn't hear clearly. Life continuing. Her phone buzzed just after midnight. A known number. Her pulse quickened, but she answered anyway. Danielle, a woman's voice said. Come. Professional. This is Sandra Collins. I'm calling on behalf of Leonard. Danielle sat up. You shouldn't be calling me. I understand this is uncomfortable, Sandra said smoothly. I just want to facilitate communication. There will be no communication, Danielle replied. I told him not to contact me. This isn't him, Sandra said. This is me. Danielle let out a short laugh. That's not how boundaries work. There was a pause on the line. Then Sandra continued, tone still polite but firmer. Leonard is concerned about misinformation being shared. About me? Danielle asked. About his behavior, Sandra corrected. He feels his reputation is being threatened. Danielle closed her eyes. By whose actions? Another pause. You're staying with Victor Langford, Sandra said. Not a question. Danielle's grip tightened on the phone. How do you know that? It's relevant, Sandra replied. To the situation. Danielle glanced toward the door. Victor's silhouette shifted faintly under the living room light. You're monitoring me, Danielle said. We're observing developments, Sandra replied. There's a difference. No, Danielle said quietly. There isn't. Sandra sighed, the first crack in her composure. Leonard wants this to resolve quietly. Danielle's voice hardened. Then tell him to leave me alone. I'll pass that along, Sandra said. But understand this, if things escalate publicly, everyone involved will be examined. Is that a threat? It's a reality, Sandra said. Good night, Danielle. The call ended. Danielle sat there, heart pounding, staring at the dark screen. A knock sounded softly at the bedroom door. Victor didn't enter. You okay? She took a breath. They called me. He stepped inside now, stopping a respectful distance away. Who? A woman. Working for Leonard, Danielle said. She knew where I was. Victor's jaw tightened. That was fast. So he's watching, Danielle said. Yes. And you knew this could happen. Victor didn't deny it. I hoped it wouldn't. She studied him, really seeing him now. The weight he carried. The way he stayed 2 steps ahead because he'd learned what happened when you didn't. Did you ever go this far before? Danielle asked. With the other woman? Victor hesitated. No. Why not? Because she didn't want help, he said quietly. And because I underestimated Leonard. Danielle swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood. I don't want to disappear. I don't want to be managed. I want my life back. Victor met her gaze. Then we take control of the narrative before he finishes building his. How? Victor reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thin folder. He handed it to her. Because Leonard isn't the only one with documentation, he said. Danielle opened the folder. Inside were reports. Statements. Names she didn't recognize. Dates going back years. And one photo that made her breath catch. Leonard. In a setting she didn't recognize. Standing beside someone whose face had been carefully blacked out. What is this? She asked. Victor's voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. The reason he never forgave me. Danielle looked up slowly. Outside the window, far below, a car idled at the curb longer than necessary before pulling away. And Danielle realized Leonard wasn't just reacting anymore. He was preparing to strike first. Danielle read through the folder slowly, deliberately, like rushing would somehow make the contents more dangerous than they already were. Names. Dates. Internal memos written in neutral language that still managed to hum with tension. Complaints labeled unsubstantiated and resolved. Yet stacked together they told a different story. Not explosive. Worse. Methodical. This is a lot, she said finally. Victor nodded. It took years to put together. She looked up. And you just kept it. I kept it because it wasn't mine to release, he said. Not without consent. From who? Danielle asked. The people involved, Victor replied. Some wanted distance. Some wanted silence. Some were afraid. Danielle's stomach tightened. Afraid of Leonard. Yes. She closed the folder carefully. And now? Now Leonard believes I still have leverage, Victor said. Whether I use it or not. Which makes me leverage too, Danielle said. Victor didn't contradict her. They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, the city glowing faintly through the window. The quiet between them felt heavier than any argument. I didn't agree to be part of a war, Danielle said. This isn't a war, Victor replied. It's a standoff. And those end how? She asked. Victor hesitated. With someone blinking. Danielle leaned back, arms crossed. Leonard won't. No, Victor said softly. He won't. Her phone buzzed again. This time a text from Elaine. Asterisk, he filed a complaint this morning. Not criminal. Civil. Claiming harassment and interference. You're named as an involved party. Asterisk. Danielle stared at the message. He's already moving. Victor read over her shoulder. His jaw set. That's faster than I expected. That doesn't make me feel better, Danielle said. It shouldn't, Victor replied. It means he wants to control timing. Which means I'm behind. Victor shook his head. No. It means he's afraid of something becoming public. She looked at him sharply. What? Victor didn't answer immediately. He stood and walked to the window, scanning the street below with practiced caution. Leonard has always been careful, he said. Not moral. Careful. He only escalates when he thinks he can predict the outcome. And he can't now, Danielle said. Not entirely, Victor agreed. She stood too, suddenly restless. I don't want to hide here. I want to go to work. I want my routine back. Victor turned. Routine is how he finds patterns. I refuse to let him dictate my movements, she snapped. I understand, Victor said evenly. But understand this in return. Right now he's collecting behavior. Silence. Response times. Locations. So what, I freeze? Danielle asked. Disappear? No, Victor said. You become unpredictable. She frowned. That sounds like something that could go very wrong. It can, Victor admitted. But predictability is more dangerous right now. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. This time from Leonard's number. Asterisk, I don't want lawyers. I don't want intermediaries. I want 5 minutes. Tomorrow. Somewhere public. Asterisk. Danielle felt her pulse spike. He wants to meet. Victor's expression darkened. Absolutely not. He said public. He says a lot of things, Victor replied. Public doesn't mean safe. He'll keep pushing until I respond, Danielle said. And the more I refuse, the more he reframes me as unstable. Victor held her gaze. Meeting him gives him something he wants. So does ignoring him, Danielle shot back. At least this way I control the setting. Silence stretched between them again. You'd go without telling me? Victor asked quietly. Danielle didn't answer right away. Then, I'm tired of everyone deciding for me. Victor exhaled slowly. If you go, it won't be alone. I didn't say that, she replied. I said I wouldn't be managed. Those aren't the same thing, Victor said. She looked away. They feel like it. Her phone buzzed once more. A photo loaded. A shot of Rivers and Rye. The front entrance. Taken from across the street. Time stamped 20 minutes ago. A second message followed. You still work late on Thursdays, right? Danielle's breath caught. Victor didn't raise his voice. Didn't rush. But something in him shifted decisively. That's not an invitation, he said. That's a warning. Danielle's hands trembled as she locked the phone. He's daring me. Yes, Victor said. And he's telling you he knows where you'll be. She met Victor's eyes, fear and resolve colliding in her chest. I won't let him chase me forever, she said. And I won't let you fight him for me. Victor stepped closer, stopping just short of her space. Then we do this together, he said. But understand something first. What? If Leonard gets you alone, Victor said quietly, it won't be about closure. Danielle swallowed hard. Outside, far below, another car slowed near the building, idled for a moment, then moved on. And Danielle realized the choice she was trying to avoid had already arrived. The question wasn't whether she would confront Leonard. It was when, and at what cost. Danielle agreed to the meeting the next morning. Not out loud. Not to Victor. Just to herself. She woke before dawn, the city still dark, and sat on the edge of the bed listening to the quiet hum of Victor's apartment. Somewhere beyond the walls, traffic began to stir. Life, indifferent and persistent. Victor was already awake when she stepped into the kitchen. He stood by the counter with his phone in his hand, jaw tight, eyes focused on something she couldn't see. You didn't sleep, she said. Neither did you, he replied. They studied each other for a long moment. This was the first time since they'd met that neither of them pretended things were under control. I'm meeting him, Danielle said. Victor didn't react immediately. No raised voice. No argument. Just a slow exhale. When? He asked. Tonight, she said. Early evening. Somewhere public. Where? His voice stayed level, but she noticed his grip tighten around the phone. I haven't replied yet, she said. But I will. Victor leaned back against the counter. Then we set conditions. Danielle shook her head. That turns it into negotiation. He'll see that as leverage. He already sees you as leverage, Victor said. The question is whether he thinks he owns it. She crossed her arms. I need to look him in the eye and tell him it's over. Clearly. Once. And when he refuses to accept that? Victor asked. Then at least I'll know, she replied. And so will he. Victor studied her like he was weighing risks he didn't want to calculate. You don't go alone. I won't, Danielle said. But you won't be sitting at the next table either. A beat. I'll be nearby, Victor said. Not asking. Stating. She didn't argue. This was the compromise neither of them liked. By late afternoon, the tension had settled into something sharper, cleaner. Danielle showered, dressed carefully. Nothing that stood out. Nothing Leonard could later reinterpret. Before she left, Victor handed her a small object. Turn it on before you sit down. She frowned. Is that a recorder? He said. Legal in this state. One-party consent. She hesitated, then slipped it into her pocket. You really think he'll say something? I think he can't help himself, Victor replied. The cafe Leonard chose was busy but not loud. Glass windows. Open sight lines. The illusion of safety wrapped in normalcy. Danielle arrived first. She chose a table near the window, ordered coffee she didn't plan to drink, and waited. Her heart beat steadily now. Not calm. Focused. Leonard arrived exactly on time. He looked the same. Polished. Controlled. Dressed like a man who wanted to be seen as reasonable. Danielle, he said, smiling like this was a reunion. Thank you for meeting me. She didn't stand. You said 5 minutes. He chuckled softly. Still setting limits. I always admired that. She didn't respond. Leonard sat anyway. Leaned forward slightly. I don't understand why this got so complicated. Because you didn't respect no, Danielle said. Leonard sighed as if disappointed. I didn't realize you felt that way. Her jaw tightened. I told you. Multiple times. You told me you were overwhelmed, he said. That's different. No, she said calmly. It isn't. Leonard studied her face, something flickering behind his eyes. Annoyance. Calculation. And Victor, Leonard continued. How does he fit into this? He doesn't, Danielle replied. Leonard smiled thinly. Come on. He doesn't just show up like that without intent. Neither do you, she said. The smile faded. You know, Leonard said quietly, people are starting to ask questions. Danielle didn't flinch. Let them. About your stability, Leonard added. Your choices. She leaned forward now. You don't get to define me anymore. Leonard's eyes hardened for a split second before smoothing over again. I'm trying to protect you. No, Danielle said. You're trying to preserve control. His hand tightened around his cup. You're making a mistake aligning yourself with him. I'm not aligned with anyone, she replied. I'm stepping away from you. Leonard laughed softly. That's what you think this is. Her phone vibrated once in her pocket. A single pulse. Victor. Leonard noticed the shift in her attention. His gaze followed it. See, Leonard said. You're not as independent as you believe. Danielle stood. This conversation is over. Leonard didn't stand. If you walk away now, you confirm everything. She paused. Confirm what? That you need him, Leonard said. And that scares people. She met his eyes. The only thing that scares people is how you behave when you lose. Leonard's jaw clenched. As she turned toward the door, his voice dropped, sharp and controlled. You don't know what you've pulled into your life, he said. Victor isn't the hero you think he is. Danielle didn't turn back. Outside the air felt colder. Cleaner. Her phone buzzed again. This time a text from Victor. He just made a call. Danielle's pulse spiked. To who, she typed. 3 dots appeared. Then stopped. Across the street, a black SUV pulled away from the curb, merging smoothly into traffic. And Danielle realized the meeting hadn't been the confrontation. It had been the signal. Victor was waiting 2 blocks away, parked where the cafe windows were still visible but not close enough to draw attention. Danielle slid into the passenger seat and closed the door with more force than she meant to. The sound felt final. You okay? Victor asked, already pulling into traffic. Yes, she said, then corrected herself. I don't know. That's honest enough, he replied. They drove in silence for a minute, the city blurring past. Danielle's hands trembled faintly in her lap. She flexed her fingers until the feeling eased. He wanted me to doubt myself, she said finally. That was the whole point. Victor nodded. He always tries to destabilize first. And the call you mentioned, Danielle added. Who was it to? Victor glanced at her, then back to the road. I don't know for sure, but I have a strong guess. She waited. Leonard maintains relationships, Victor said. Former colleagues, consultants, people who trade information. If he made a call right after you stood up to him, it wasn't emotional. It was procedural. Danielle exhaled slowly. So what does that procedure look like? Background checks, Victor replied. Framing. Pressure. On me? Yes, he said. And on me. That should have made her feel less alone. Instead, it made the weight heavier. They didn't go back to Victor's apartment. Instead, he drove toward a part of the city Danielle didn't recognize. Fewer lights. Office buildings closed for the night. Streets that felt emptied out on purpose. Where are we going? She asked. A place I didn't want to involve you in, Victor said. But Leonard just forced my hand. The building they stopped in front of looked unremarkable. Glass doors. A small plaque beside the entrance. Victor parked and turned to her. Before we go in, you need to understand something. Her chest tightened. What? Once you hear what I'm about to show you, Victor said, you don't get the option of pretending this is just about a bad breakup. Danielle nodded. I already don't. Inside, the building was quiet but not empty. A receptionist looked up, recognized Victor immediately, and nodded without asking questions. They took an elevator down. The doors opened into a hallway that smelled faintly of paper and coffee. Offices lined the walls, lights still on despite the hour. People worked quietly, focused like they'd learned not to waste energy on surprises. This is a risk consultancy, Victor said as they walked. Not private investigators. Not law enforcement. We analyze behavior patterns and escalation risks for organizations. And Leonard? Danielle asked. He's been flagged before, Victor replied. They stopped at a door near the end of the hall. Victor unlocked it and gestured for her to enter. Inside, a large screen glowed softly. Files were open. Names blurred out. Charts and timelines spread across the display. Victor tapped a tablet and one file expanded. Leonard's name appeared at the top. Danielle's stomach dropped. This is ongoing, she said. You're still tracking him. Victor shook his head. Not tracking. Monitoring open source indicators. Public records. Complaints. Patterns. Danielle scanned the screen. Dates. Locations. Red flags noted quietly, clinically. Then she saw it. Her name. Listed under recent trigger events. Her throat tightened. I'm a data point. You're a catalyst, Victor corrected. There's a difference. She turned to him sharply. You said you wouldn't do this again. I said I wouldn't intervene unilaterally, Victor replied. This isn't intervention yet. Yet, she repeated. Victor met her gaze. Leonard escalates when 3 conditions are met. Which are? Danielle asked. Loss of control, Victor said. Public contradiction. And a belief that consequences can be managed. Danielle felt cold spread through her chest. And tonight? All 3, Victor said. She looked back at the screen, at the clean lines and measured language trying to contain something deeply human and volatile. What happens next? She asked. Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up another file. Older. Archive. Leonard's name appeared again. Beside it was a different name. Redacted. This, Victor said quietly, is the woman I told you about. Danielle leaned closer. What happened to her? Victor swallowed. She tried to handle it alone. She thought silence would end it. Danielle's voice dropped. Did it? Victor shook his head once. No. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. And you stopped him, Danielle said slowly. By exposing him. Yes, Victor said. Just enough to disrupt his access. And now he knows you're watching again. Victor nodded. Which means he'll either retreat or accelerate. And which do you think he'll do? Victor's jaw tightened. Leonard doesn't retreat when witnesses are involved. Danielle straightened, something hard and clear settling into place inside her. So I stopped being a witness, she said. Victor looked at her sharply. No. I stopped being reactive, she corrected. I stopped letting him define the pace. Victor studied her for a long moment. That's dangerous. So is waiting, Danielle replied. Before Victor could respond, a phone rang somewhere down the hall. Then another. The receptionist's voice came faintly over the intercom. Victor. We just got an alert. Victor turned back to the screen. Leonard's file refreshed. A new entry appeared at the top. Subject contacted third-party media consultant. Victor read aloud. Potential preemptive disclosure. Danielle felt her pulse spike. He's going public, she said. Yes, Victor replied. And he's going to tell his version first. Victor looked at her, expression grave. That's the second phase, he said. And it's where things get messy. Danielle took a steady breath. Then she said the words that surprised them both. Then it's time I told mine. They didn't leave the office right away. Victor pulled up a chair and gestured for Danielle to sit across from him, the glow of the screen washing both their faces in pale light. Around them, the quiet hum of focused work continued, people moving with purpose but not panic. That alone told her something. This wasn't chaos. This was escalation they'd seen before. If you tell your story, Victor said carefully, it has to be precise. Danielle nodded. Not emotional. Not defensive, he added. And not speculative. She exhaled. Just facts. Just facts, Victor confirmed. Delivered before he finishes shaping the frame. A younger woman stepped into the office, tablet in hand. We've flagged a journalist Leonard's consultant works with. Long-form profile writer. Reputation for balanced takes. Danielle let out a soft, humorless laugh. Balanced always means generous to the louder voice. The woman hesitated. Do you want us to? No, Victor said. Not yet. The woman nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind her. Danielle leaned back in her chair. He's going to say I'm unstable. That I was confused. That Victor manipulated me. Yes, Victor said. Which is why you don't respond to that. What do I respond to? The timeline, Victor said. Your boundaries. His responses to them. Danielle closed her eyes briefly, pulling the memories into order. Not the feelings. The facts. When I ended things, she began, voice steady, I said I needed space. He showed up at my job. Victor nodded. Dates. I blocked him, she continued. He contacted me through intermediaries. Names? Victor said. I told him not to contact me again, Danielle said. He sent photos of my apartment. My workplace. Victor met her eyes. That's the spine of it. Her phone buzzed on the table. Elaine. Danielle picked it up. He's going public, she said as soon as the call connected. I know, Elaine replied. And so are you if you choose to. I don't want a spectacle, Danielle said. Neither does Leonard, Elaine said. That's why he's framing this as concern. Danielle's jaw tightened. Then we take away his concern. Elaine paused. Are you sure? Danielle glanced at Victor, then back to the screen with Leonard's name glowing at the top. I'm done being quiet. All right, Elaine said. Then we do this cleanly. Written statement first. No interviews yet. Agreed, Danielle said. After the call ended, Victor slid a document template toward her. Blank. Simple. This is yours, he said. No one edits it but you. Danielle stared at the empty page. The weight of it pressed against her chest. She began to type. Not quickly. Not cautiously. Just steadily. She wrote about meeting Leonard. About the charm that came first, the pressure that followed. About the first time she said no and the way it was ignored. About work, about messages, about fear that crept in quietly and then refused to leave. She didn't describe emotions. She described actions. When she finished, the room felt different. Not lighter. Clear. Victor read it once. Then again. He didn't suggest changes. He only nodded. "This holds," he said. Outside the office, the city was shifting toward morning. Danielle realized she hadn't checked the time in hours. Her phone buzzed again. A notification. Leonard's name was trending. Her stomach dropped. "He moved faster than we thought." Victor refreshed the screen. An article loaded. Vague language. Concerned sources. No accusations yet. Just implication. Danielle's hands trembled. "He's painting himself as confused. Hurt." Victor looked at her. "And you?" She straightened. "I post." Elaine texted back almost immediately when Danielle sent her the statement. "Ready when you are." Danielle hovered over the button for a moment. This was the point of no return. No more quiet exits. No more shrinking. She pressed publish. The document went live. Simple. Unembellished. Time-stamped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the notifications began. Shares. Comments. Messages from people she didn't know and a few she did. Some supportive. Some skeptical. All proof that the silence had broken. Victor watched the data scroll. "He'll respond." "I know," Danielle said. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She didn't answer. A text followed instead. "You've made this worse." Danielle stared at the words, then set the phone face down. Victor didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere distant, then faded. Danielle leaned back in her chair, exhaustion settling into her bones. "What happens now?" Victor folded his hands. "Now we watch how he reacts to losing control in public. And if he doesn't handle it well?" Victor's voice was calm, but his eyes weren't. "Then we stop protecting his image." Danielle met his gaze, understanding finally what that meant. Across the screen, Leonard's file refreshed again. Another alert appeared. Subject attempting direct contact. Danielle's phone buzzed immediately after. This time the message was shorter. "You don't get to do this to me." Danielle didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because for the first time since this began, Leonard wasn't narrating the story. And he knew it. Leonard didn't disappear. That was the first thing Danielle understood when morning fully arrived. The city woke up slowly like it always did. Traffic thickened. Coffee shops opened. People argued, laughed, scrolled, lived. But underneath that normal rhythm, something had shifted. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Irreversibly. Victor watched the alerts taper off as the hours passed. Not stop. Taper. Leonard's attempts to regain control were still there, but they were changing shape. Less confident. More reactive. "That's not victory," Danielle said quietly, reading over his shoulder. "No," Victor agreed. "That's containment." Her phone buzzed again. Not Leonard this time. A message from a woman she didn't recognize. Asterisk, "I read your statement. I wish I'd had the courage to write mine." Asterisk. Danielle stared at the words for a long moment. Then another message arrived. And another. Different names. Different cities. Same pattern. She felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized was locked. Elaine arrived mid-morning. She looked tired but steady, the way people do when they know the ground has shifted but they're still standing on it. "Leonard's consultant is walking things back," Elaine said. Quietly. "He didn't expect resistance this clean." Danielle nodded. "He thought he could overwhelm me." "He thought he could outpace you," Elaine corrected. "He miscalculated." Victor stepped back, giving them space. Danielle noticed that too. He was still there. Still watching. But no longer positioning himself in front of her. That mattered. "What happens next?" Danielle asked. Elaine didn't sugarcoat it. "He may file again. He may retreat. He may try to provoke you privately. And if he does? We document," Elaine said. "We respond only when necessary. And we don't chase closure." Danielle exhaled. "I don't need it anymore." That afternoon, Danielle went back to her apartment. Victor offered to come with her. She declined. Not because she didn't appreciate him. Because she needed to reclaim something on her own terms. The building looked the same. The hallway smelled faintly of cleaning solution and old carpet. Her door stood where it always had. Ordinary. She unlocked it. Inside nothing was disturbed. No dramatic signs. No final warning. Just the quiet space she'd left days earlier. She opened the windows. Let the city in. Her phone buzzed once more. Leonard. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she blocked the number. No announcement. No final message. Just silence. That night, Danielle met Victor for coffee. Neutral ground. Public. Normal. They sat across from each other without urgency now. You don't owe me anything, Victor said after a while. I know, Danielle replied. And I won't stay involved unless you ask. She met his eyes. You didn't save me. Victor smiled faintly. Good. I saved myself, she continued. You just didn't look away. That's fair, he said. They sat there, the tension that once defined every interaction finally loosening into something quieter. Not romance. Not rescue. Respect. When Danielle walked home later, she didn't check reflections. Didn't count footsteps. She stayed aware, but she didn't shrink. Control didn't come back all at once. It came in pieces, in choosing when to speak, when not to, in knowing the difference. Leonard faded from her daily thoughts. Not because he vanished, but because he no longer occupied the center of the story. She did. And if you've stayed with this story until now, you probably understand why some stories aren't about dramatic endings or perfect justice. They're about reclaiming voice one decision at a time. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of someone you know or something you've lived, take a moment to support the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. These stories exist because people recognize themselves in them. And if you're watching from somewhere familiar or somewhere far away, feel free to share that too. Some stories need witnesses. This one already found its own ending.